Welcome. I am Katey Kratz. I am one of the executive directors of Heartland Fabricare Association, but I'm also one of the wonderful people working with S&ECC, which is Safety and Environmental Compliance Consultants. So we are the people that you want to come in before OSHA makes a visit. You would rather talk to us than you would pay some hefty fines. So we are the ones who go in, help you with training, your SDS sheets, the safety data sheets. So we put together those books. We do annual compliance visits where we come in, we evaluate everything, give feedback to businesses, and talk through some easy ways you guys can make changes in order to keep everyone safe and also be compliant with all of the federal regulations. We also put out weekly or monthly newsletters that include things like safety topics to talk about with all of your team for monthly safety meetings, and we put together wonderful social media posts that educate people on a weekly basis. So with that, we'll get started with a presentation that I've put together. So most of the things we've put together in this are free ways that you can actually save money, save lives, and help your employees just stay safe and run even a more smooth business. I love what I do. I absolutely enjoy going in and training people. Honestly, the training phone calls that we do are some of my absolute favorite things because that one-on-one personal connection is such a beautiful, beautiful point. We get to talk with people on a daily and weekly basis and evaluate all the good, the bad, and the ugly. There is a lot that we see, and a lot of good things, and a lot of things that are less than stellar. And we are able to advise businesses on how they can improve these things on a regular basis. That way you're not getting $30,000, $40,000 in fines for things that are preventable and easy fixes. So even just in this picture, you can see some positives and some negatives. You have that SDS book, you have handrails, and then you've also got chemicals without labels, expired first aid equipment, open holes, you've got extension cords all over the place, and the things that when you're in your business on a daily basis, you don't necessarily think about because you're so used to going through every day, every motion, going through your business, you see it, it becomes background. So when we ask, what causes 90% of all workplace injuries? A lot of people will say things like fire, or they'll say electrocution, things like that. But truly, truly what it is stress. Stress, burnout, fatigue, anything like that. Between 80 to 90% of all workplace accidents are caused by human error, and the likelihood of these injuries increase when workers are stressed or fatigued. That sounds like a crazy number. 90% of all workplace injuries are due to stress, dehydration, fatigue, and burnout. The biggest thing we can do is help employees stay safe by keeping them happy, hydrated, and well rested. There are some quick solutions that we can go about helping these situations and reducing that stress, dehydration, fatigue. First one is training. Training is the biggest thing that I would like to hammer in every time I'm talking to someone. If you know what you're looking for, what you're looking out for, if you've been well trained in how to handle situations and how to do your job, then you are less likely to become fatigued on the job. You're less likely to get injured. You're more likely to take your time because you know what can happen. When we train people, we do it a lot with storytelling, telling stories about how people have been injured, how people have ended up in the hospital, how people have died because of things like fatigue and not taking care of themselves, or having something like a workplace incident that really shouldn't have happened in the first place. So that training is number one, always the first thing that we should be doing. The next thing is safety meetings. Training up front has to happen before people start their first day. However, things kind of fall into the background, or you feel like you can kind of bend the rules as you keep going. So, regular safety meetings I recommend on a weekly basis that are in person, face to face, one on one, or in a group where you are literally talking to the people there are a great way to actually make a difference. I'm sure you all have heard now about the new OSHA rule that's been proposed regarding heat stress awareness. As much as we like to think that heat stress isn't a big deal necessarily, it does end a lot of people up in the hospital. And dry cleaners, as you know, are really warm places. So making sure that people know not only how to treat heat stress, but also the signs so that they can take care of themselves before it becomes a problem. It's like a cycle of pain. If you've ever heard of that, you have to keep in front of it so that you don't have to do as much on the back end. You want to break that cycle. You want to watch out for the signs up front so that you're not treating something much, much, much worse. It's like preventative care. The other piece is ergonomic mats. It sounds simple, but if you've stood for a long period of time, you know that that wears on your body. It causes back pain, tiredness, all of the things that make us less aware of our surroundings and more susceptible to injury. So ergonomic mats are a great way for people to stay in the zone, in the job, and become less fatigued. The other one is offering breaks. When you're doing things like working in a hot location, it's important that you take regular breaks in order to hydrate, to keep yourself safe, and to avoid that fatigue. Because when fatigue starts to set in, we start becoming less aware of what's happening. We start to bend more rules. We start to make shortcuts. We start to do the things that put us in unsafe situations. So, those few things, along with supplying water and supplying fans, can make one of the biggest differences. A lot of the businesses that we go into will have a fridge that is stocked with water, especially during the summer months, because water is cheaper than workman's comp. It is cheaper than paying a hospital bill. It is way, way more effective than anything else you can do. Making sure that people have breaks, they have water, and that they stay cool. So there's some other top sources of workplace injury. The first one, that's the biggest, but the other 10 to 20% are composed of a few other things. Things like slips, trips, and falls. And those can happen a number of different ways. Those slips, trips, and falls can happen from a small crack in the floor. They can happen from a frayed edge of a worn mat. They can happen from little itty bitty things. These are some of the pictures that I have taken within the businesses that we've actually visited, where I have told people, you might want to make this change. You might want to consider doing something a little bit differently so that your employees stay safe. What's required from OSHA is that you at least provide caution tape or put down the edges of every single surface so that they don't become a risk. Any hole that is larger than 3 inches or 2 inches also must be covered. So things like floor drains or drainage ditches, they have to be covered. The other thing is keeping clear pathways. Clear pathways can actually reduce injury by simply allowing people the space to travel freely. You get so used to those clear pathways being there that if something's out of place, it can actually become an issue because you're used to routine. So every day, checking for, making sure that you don't have any areas where you could incur those slips, where people could trip, where they could fall, is an important way to actually help your whole team. So some quick solutions, quick, cheap, effective solutions. Tape around areas like mats or where there's a height difference in the floor, over entryways, things like that, or caution paint. We've seen people put paint on the floor around electrical boxes to keep employees out of that area, or to let them know that there's a height difference in the floor, especially where there's things like ramps. Drain and floor covers are a big one. You don't need somebody stepping in one and breaking an ankle anytime. Rope or chain to mark off areas where there might be a significant height difference. You might have seen on the previous slide how there was a whole wooden panel there. Below that was a full story drop to the floor below. So making sure all of those areas are roped off, chained off, or boarded off so that employees don't accidentally misstep and end up falling to the floor below. Rugs. If you have a frayed rug, making sure that you replace that on a regular basis or tape down the edges so that they don't become a tripping hazard. Other things like caution signs and keeping objects off of the ground are very effective in helping people stay safe on a daily basis. The next top source of workplace injury is being struck by objects. And this one gets a little tricky because there are some things that are just moving parts. Within dry cleaners especially, you have a lot of moving parts and pieces on a regular basis. And especially for anyone who's been there for a while, those things end up coming back in the background. So we sometimes forget that we need to make our newer employees or people who are fatigued aware that those are issues. So big one, even just putting tennis balls on the end of a pipe or a rack that might have a sharp edge. That's bright, it's soft, and it helps prevent head injuries. The next picture you'll see is actually from the back of a machine. And we see this all too often. Things can move within these machines that we're using, right? We want to make sure that all of the housing that goes on the machinery, that goes on any of the equipment, is replaced as soon as you are done repairing it or doing something within it. If you are cleaning, if you are repairing, we want to make sure that that housing goes immediately back onto the piece of equipment. We don't need things flying off of there or becoming pinch injuries if somebody sticks their hand in there or a garment gets caught in there. That is just a simple, easy, free way to avoid unnecessary injuries. The other one, and you might not be able to see this, there are these objects that you can't really see and you don't necessarily understand exactly where they're at. So in the third picture, you have a head height, face height rack right there. I almost ran face first into this, but was paying attention to my surroundings. Putting something like yellow tape or yellow paint, or even just a sign that says low clearance, can help people be aware that those things are an issue. So again, some of our quick solutions here are proper labeling, making sure things are labeled with caution signs or that they have all of those paint or tape or anything that labels it moving object. All of those labels help us bring an awareness to our surroundings. Other things like end cap covers and protection, clear pathways, no entry zones, and machine housing. And most importantly, again, that training. Training is number one, telling people that they have to put the machine housing back on, that they shouldn't interfere, and having those, again, no-go zones. There are zones where just the employer should be, where just the person who is working on a piece of equipment should be. Making it very clear that those individuals should be the only ones in that area can help you prevent, again, unnecessary injury. Worthwhile investments include things like machine guarding. There are some parts and pieces that move again very regularly. And there are some upgrades you can likely make that either include auto shut off or safeguards that will help keep employees safe, especially again at the end of the day, at the end of the week, when they're feeling fatigued and tired and often are not aware of their surroundings. The next big one, the next big source of workplace injury is electrocution. And this one is very avoidable. There are some ways that you can stay safe and not get electrocuted. Again, proper labeling, just making sure that the labels, the safety labels that come on your equipment haven't worn off, that they are new, that you can read them. Also, training in proper lockout tagout procedures, using caution signs, no entry or authorized personnel zones. Again, around those electric boxes, none of your employees need to be there. Only the ones who are specifically trained in how to handle that equipment. So making it very clear that that is a no-go zone. The other big one, and the thing that I see the most often, is proper extension cord use. Extension cords are only meant to be used for up to 90 days. That's it. They become a major fire hazard. They became a major hazard in the workplace. A lot of them are not built to handle the kind of equipment that is being used within businesses. So it's important that the appropriate electric be run to the equipment that is being used on a daily basis. And that last one again is education. I am all about education and training to keep people safe on a regular basis. Even just involving like proper extension cord use in your monthly safety meeting can change everything. Did you know electric hazards are the #1 source of workplace fires? It's not equipment. It's not personal error. It's things like those extension cords or not having things plugged in appropriately or not having the appropriate wiring. Electric hazards are the #1 source of workplace fire. So some quick things, quick tips, and some OSHA requirements. I had someone ask me, how many fire extinguishers do I need? And the truth is, you have to have one within 75 feet of every workspace. Every employee, no matter where they're working, has to be able to access a fire extinguisher every 75 feet. Fire extinguishers must be inspected on a yearly basis. And those fire extinguishers can be inspected by places like your local fire department. And if your local fire department doesn't actually inspect them, they can give you great places that you can go that are actually accredited. We actually ran across a business recently where a fire extinguisher inspector just walked in and they said, I'm here to inspect your fire extinguishers. And the employees thought nothing of it. The owner then got a bill, never made an appointment, never asked them to come in. They don't know if they're accredited, but they showed up. They showed the employees, oh, this is what I'm here for. And everyone just went with it. So you want to make sure that they are actually inspected by somebody who has the appropriate credentials. The next thing is businesses must have a written emergency policy and a designated meeting location for fire. That designated meeting location has to be posted on the fire escape route throughout the building. Every employee is supposed to be actually retrained on that every single year. Fire duties should also be assigned. My motto is, when in doubt, get out. If you haven't been assigned firefighting duties, get out of the building, get out of the way, and stay safe. People think that because there is a fire extinguisher, they know exactly what to do with it. But the truth is, most people have never actually used a fire extinguisher. The other big piece is exits must have a lighted sign with backup power. If the power goes out, there has to be a battery backup that allows those signs to continue to be lit so that people know how to escape a building, whether it is in case of a weather emergency or a fire emergency or anything else that might be happening, a smoke-filled building. You're not going to see a regular unlit sign if a building is on fire and there is smoke all around. There is no way that that is going to happen. So, with fire extinguishers, if you haven't been trained in how to use one, there is an easy acronym that I teach everyone that we train. It is PASS. Pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. PASS. Pull the pin, aim the nozzle, squeeze the handle, and sweep it across the area. Every extinguisher that is rated ABC will fight all kinds of fires. If it's not rated ABC, you have some kinds of fires that those won't fight. They are rated for different things. But most importantly, fire extinguishers only last 3 to 20 seconds. And that's if they're new, if they're in good condition, if they've been inspected. They only last 3 to 20 seconds, which in the grand scheme of things is not very long. So unless you know what you're doing, my thought is, when in doubt, get out. Always make sure that you stay safe over everything else. So there are a few other things. Those are the major points where people become injured. They're the biggest points of injury, of illness, of workplace issue. But there's a few other things that we see on a very regular basis and a few quick fixes that can change things. Number one is labeling. Every container has to have a label. It has to say what is in that bottle and what some of the hazards are. Say you have two bottles next to each other. Both are clear liquids. One is water, one is bleach. Knowing the difference is going to make everything change. The story we tell often is about a friend of ours who actually ended up accidentally drinking a bottle of bleach. It is one of the reasons that I tell people to not have food or drink within their workspace and to have bottles that have covers on them that you cannot confuse, with any of your chemicals. You have to have those chemicals labeled so there is no chance of any kind of accident. And in the event that someone becomes injured, they best know what is in that bottle so that they can go reference their SDS or tell medical personnel what it is that they have accidentally gotten on their skin, gotten in their eyes, ingested, any number of things. So everything, whether it is in the original container or in a secondary container, has to have a label. The next big one is first aid supplies and an eye wash. If you are going to provide first aid supplies, you need to do a regular check that they are actually in date, that they are not expired. We see more expired first aid supplies than I care to actually say. Some of them dating back to 2011 and 2008, which for some of us, we might think is yesterday, but let's be real, we're in 2025 now. That was 15 plus years ago. So we want to make sure that those are in date all of the time and that employees have access to an eye wash. This is one we've already covered, but is a doozy. Making sure that anytime you have a repair done to a piece of equipment, that housing goes back on every single time. That is one thing that OSHA will call you on if they show up. They see the back to a piece of equipment, you best believe you will have a fine. And then PPE, including hearing protection. So dry cleaners have the tendency to become loud places, especially around pressing machines or those cleaning machinery. So the sound, the ambient sound coming from those can exceed what is the standard through OSHA, which is 85 decibels. On your phone, if you have a smart device, you can actually download a decibel reader that will tell you exactly how loud it is in those areas. If you have employees who are around that equipment on a regular basis, they are supposed to have hearing protection. The other thing is PPE. If you are going to provide things like gloves or masks, you want to make sure that you always have them in stock and that they are for the people currently on your team. If you have respirators that have been designated to a team member, make sure they are current with the people currently employed. So one of the last parts with this is, how do you appease OSHA? And the biggest thing, the biggest free thing that you can do is training and documentation. It is the first thing they will ask for if they show up. You need to make sure that your employees have been trained and that you have documentation of it and that they were trained prior to their first work assignment. Not the day of, not 6 hours into their shift, first thing. And then you have to make sure that your training is always up to date. Every year, employees should be retrained on everything. The other thing is your SDS. You want to make sure that it is up to date and that you keep all retired chemical sheets. You have to keep those for actually 30 years. All of those SDS sheets have to be kept for 30 years. If you have an employee that comes back and claims that they have an injury due to a chemical they used, you need to know what dates they were there and what dates that chemical was in use so that you can go back and look at those things and compare. The other thing is your OSHA 300. The 300 form must be posted January through the end of April. So happy May 1st, your OSHA 300 form can officially come down. However, you have to keep it on hand. You must retain it and have it in your files for the next 5 years following. 5 years following the date in which you had it. And we've already talked about this, but I'm just going to say it one more time. Yearly retraining, regular training with documentation of it. Having your employees sign off that they have done their regular training every year is imperative, both for OSHA and for regular safety practices. After a year, half the stuff you have learned on your first day is gone out the window. So making sure you come back to it, at least the important points, on a very regular basis is going to save you a lot of heartache and a lot of money. So anything that we've talked about here, like caution tape or fire extinguishers, exit signs, you can actually find using this QR code to a quick shop on Amazon. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us for more information, for opportunities to chat some more, and for those questions that you might have. So I'm going to open this up. If anyone has any questions at this point, you all are welcome to chime in. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time and for this opportunity. Safety is one of the biggest things for me and something I truly, actually enjoy talking about.